Now we talk about strength and coordination. The first thing is to measure strength, all right? This is our portable dynamometer. It goes with the athlete wherever they go. A lot of you guys have your players that are in the off season right now. You have no idea where their arm strength lies. Some of them are not even following your throwing programs. They're working with someone else who may be advancing them at a higher rate than what you have in your program, and there's a potential that they're imbalanced. Okay, that's a big problem. Lost observations cause injury. When you miss data, that's why I said there's no luck or bad luck, and I do not believe there's injurious mechanics. I believe injuries are 99% related to arm strength. And you can think back, there's a lot of pitchers that had really gross deliveries and they didn't get hurt. And that's because they have a really strong arm. When you have higher amounts of arm strength, you also have less muscle damage, you have less pain. Okay? Even delayed onset muscle soreness, it's harder to break down muscle tissue. All right, pain, inflammation, those things change your movement pattern. Keep a strong arm, know where the athlete is, that's so important. You have to understand strength. I could show you a picture, it's not in this presentation, but I have a couple pictures of Greg Maddux. Okay, who was one of the few pitchers that pitched a long time without a surgery. Now, we all were taught when we land is to land with a T position, right? Is to be able to be, I mean, this is what I see it in youth leagues, is, try to land with your arms, both of them at 90 degrees, right? Now, when you look at pictures of Maddux, all right, when he lands, his elbow's here, okay? It's pinched into his side. But yesterday we talked about co-contraction, is that he can hold this position as he rotates up, and then it elevates easily. Now, if you think about it, someone asked me yesterday about the elbow hike position, okay? Sometimes athletes that have certain anatomical structures that are abnormal, they might have more of a hooked acromion, they have less space in between their rotator cuff, and they get pinching. Okay, and you're trying to force them up in this position to 90-90, it's actually causing them more harm than good. Okay, so you can even try yourself. If you lift your arm, you're blocked, right? But if I get my arm prepared underneath my shoulder, for some athletes, that's what feels comfortable. And what I've been talking about is motor preference, not pattern. We've got to stop thinking about pattern. The pattern-based teaching is basically get to a T position. I coached a lot of athletes doing that. I don't believe in it anymore. The first thing is I want to see how they like to throw and make their arm as strong as possible. That's important in the strength equation. Now I'm going to give you a real case example. This is a pitcher that actually, I flew to Atlanta, and he's a college guy, came to me from Tennessee, with his family, long way. I worked with him for 4 hours, and during the time that we talked, he had an issue going on in his labrum. He had a PRP injection, okay? Thank God it's not a labral tear. But we evaluated his arm strength, okay? And I'm going to show you some arm strength data from our app, because I want you guys to know we may not have time to go through all the arm strength details. We have another course, the Certified Arm Care Specialist course. It's 6.5 hours. You'll know this inside and out. It's a brand new language. It's like coming out with TrackMan before TrackMan, was commonplace here. Okay, you're teaching new language. I'm going to go through some anatomy of this app. The first number that you need to look at is this middle number here. That's our arm score. Okay. In performance, maximum arm strength is important. In performance, maximum strength in anything in performance, arm speed, competitive lifting, acceleration, max strength is important. When it comes to health, relative strength is much more impactful, okay? We could all be in this room, we could all have the same arm strength. However, athletes that are smaller that produce the same arm strength are relatively stronger. And when I talked about Joe again, I'll readdress what makes him so unique. He's a 240-pound athlete that has 100 here. He has 100% body weight strength in his arm. He has 200 pounds of arm strength, okay? That is very unusual for a large athlete. Here's the issue, because I did invite a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, which I hope will become strength and coordination coaches. The bigger, faster, stronger model, as we relate to athletes, and we had a conversation about this last night, is frightening to me. It is the scariest thing in sport that's overhand, okay? There is the high potential that you outgrow your arm strength. It's actually faster to gain lean muscle mass than it is to gain strength in small muscles, okay? Because lean muscle mass, when you're gaining lean muscle mass, that's usually done with global exercise, squats, deadlifts, pressing, okay? Your testosterone levels are hiked up a lot more. And what can happen is you're gonna shoot down this relative strength. All right, remember that I told you that is such a critical element, is to not outgrow your strength and to have a huge amount of relative strength. This is displayed as a score, but it's essentially a percentage. Our minimum safety is 70. You need to have in your athletes, I'll repeat it, 70% body weight strength in their throwing arm. If you don't, you're exposing them to significant risk. If you can get to the level of where Joe is at 100% body weight, especially for your big boys, and it's going to be hard, man, we're in a good place. And this is why I don't like how arm care is viewed, is because arm care does not focus in not saying our company, but in the industry, does not focus on max strength. It is focused on endurance. Endurance comes from throwing. They're doing that every day. Max strength is the key, and again, I'm just going to reiterate, the relationship is that, let's just say I'm a 400-pound squatter, and it only takes me 200 pounds to get to a velocity that I need, right? If I move my max strength to 500 pounds, that 200 pounds for the velocity I need becomes even lighter. It becomes more economical. It becomes more efficient. I use less effort. My contractile ability is greater, okay? This is why max strength is so important, okay? The next measure that is really important in our strength and coordination approach is the strength velocity ratio. Write down SVR. SVR is the measure of pounds per miles per hour. Throwing arm pounds per miles per hour, okay? And you want to put it in a maximum, not an average. You want to know what is the absolute physical limit of the throwing arm, and you need to keep updating that when an athlete hits a new max. If the athlete cannot achieve a 1.6, that also exposes them to injury, okay? You need to have 60% more strength in your arm than you do velocity. I throw 100, I need 160 pounds of strength. I also mentioned, remember, let me go to the crowd. Who can I go to? Lance. A 1 mile per hour increase equals how many units of load on the arm? What's the relationship? Do you remember? 1 to 1. You increase 1 mile per hour of velocity, you've increased your loading by 1 unit. Now, we all get excited, and I mentioned yesterday when we talk, I see it on social media, guys gain 7 miles per hour, all right? And we get excited in our company. However, we know this is happening because we're testing our athletes all the time. They're getting to 1.6 or better, okay? They're getting their velocity enhancement from strength, not from length. There is a big difference. When you get your velocity from elastic resources, you crank back the catapult, you're using more stretching of passive tissues, you're exposing yourself to risk. And I'll mention it again, if you have a guy that's got a 1.29, remember, he's got a slap problem. This is, and it's healed now. He's throwing again, and this is where he's at, pain-free. He's exposed to a secondary injury that's probably going to be a slap tear. Okay? If these people do not have a 1.6, do not put them in a weighted ball program that involves running guns. Just going to say it right now. If you do that, it's the kiss of death. Because they are going to advance velocity so fast and it is going to be so elastic that you're exposing your athlete to injury.